Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. This is actually the very first installment in our brand new series, Emotion Schooling for Enhanced Classroom Processes. Now, if you're a teacher, you know firsthand that the classroom can be, well, an absolutely incredible place. But let's be totally honest with each other here. It can also be incredibly demanding, right? And seriously stressful. So today, we're focusing on emotion self-awareness and the absolute power of labeling your emotions. Because honestly, it's a super effective way to bring down the intensity of a situation and keep you grounded when things start getting chaotic.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to picture a scenario that I think literally every single educator has lived through. You're standing at the front of the classroom, you've prepped this fantastic, super engaging lesson, and a student just keeps talking over you. Ask yourself, in that exact moment, what were you really feeling?
Usually, it all happens in a flash, doesn't it? You start off just kind of irritated, but then that irritation simmers and brews into frustration. Next thing you know, you're just plain angry. And before you even realize it, your voice gets louder. Listen, it's a completely natural human escalation. It just happens when we're trying to hold on to control of a room.
But wait a second, was it really just anger? A lot of the time, we grab onto one big, broad word like mad or angry to cover up a whole tangled web of feelings. If we take a second to look underneath that immediate reaction, were you actually feeling disrespected? Or maybe disappointed? Helpless, even? Or, maybe you were just worried about that student's progress. Or frankly, maybe you're just plain exhausted from a really long week. So, this brings us to a really crucial concept, the emotion continuum. See, emotions aren't just these single fixed words. They actually exist on a spectrum, a continuum of very specific feelings that fall under one broad category. Just saying I am angry or I'm upset, well, it barely scratches the surface of what you're actually going through.
When we break that continuum down, we see this whole incredible range. Under anger, for instance, you've got everything from mild irritation and frustration all the way up to deep resentment and rage. Or take fear. That spans from basic worry and nervousness right up to severe anxiety and insecurity. The big takeaway here is that the more precisely we can name an emotion from this continuum, the better we can actually understand what's happening inside us. Section 1. Reading your body signals and noticing physical cues. Now, before we can even put a name to the feeling, we have to actually recognize that it's there. And fun fact, our bodies actually broadcast our emotional state way before our brains find the exact words for it. Just think about the physical cues of anger for a second. A tight jaw, stiff shoulders, maybe your face gets suddenly hot or your heartbeat really starts racing. We all have these physical tells. And okay, these aren't fixed rules for everybody. Maybe when you're anxious, you get butterflies, or when you're sad, you get that lump in your throat and this sort of heavy energy. But the point is, everyone's bodily reactions are totally unique, and they are absolutely your very first clue. So, here is your very first actionable tool. Next time something happens in the classroom that triggers you, I want you to hit the pause button and ask yourself, what am I noticing in my body right now? Just checking in with your physical state first, it immediately grounds you right back in the present moment. Section 2. The power of naming and shifting to curiosity. Once you actually notice that physical cue, well, then you can start to define it. And this is where we introduce a core psychological shift. It's what moves us away from a state of pure automatic reaction and into a state of genuine curiosity. I want you to notice the difference between saying, I am angry, versus, I notice that I am feeling angry. It seems like this tiny, almost completely insignificant tweak in wording, right? But honestly, this subtle little change completely transforms your relationship with the feeling, because suddenly you're no longer identifying as the emotion itself. Psychologists actually call this psychological distance, but let's break that jargon down into plain English for a second. It literally just means creating a little space between yourself and your emotion so you aren't completely consumed by it. It's kind of like taking a step back from a massive painting so you can actually see the whole picture, instead of having your nose pressed right up against the canvas, where literally all you can see is red. So what do we actually do with that little bit of space? We get curious. With that extra mental breathing room, you can basically act as an investigator of your own mind. You can ask, what objectively just happened? What internal story am I telling myself about this situation right now? And most importantly, what is really underneath my reaction? Let's look at how this plays out in a real classroom setting. On the surface, your narrative might be,
My student is not listening, which of course immediately triggers frustration. But if we dig underneath that, using that psychological distance we just talked about, the reality is often closer to, I'm worried they're falling behind. See, that surface level irritation is frequently just a mask. It's hiding a deeper, more caring emotion. Or maybe just an unmet expectation for cooperation. Section 3. Moving from reaction to response and making the emotional choice. Okay, now that we know how to unpack what's happening beneath the surface, how do we actively use this during a busy school day? Well, let's walk through the step-by-step architecture of emotional choice. Here is the exact framework that you can take with you into school tomorrow. Step 1, notice your physical signals. Step 2, name the precise emotion on that continuum. Step 3, understand the root cause or the story behind it. And Step 4, choose your response. Following this exact sequence is what bridges the gap between those knee-jerk automatic reactions and actual thoughtful choices. It creates a much calmer classroom environment, and frankly, it's just way better self-care for you as an educator. I really want you to let this quote sink in for a second. Emotions are not the enemy, they are information. If you ever feel guilty for getting frustrated with your class, please let that go. The goal of emotion schooling is absolutely never to stop feeling angry or sad or worried. That's impossible. The goal is to use the data those emotions are providing you to address the actual underlying issue. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. The very next time you're triggered, and hey, in a busy classroom, there is definitely going to be a next time, what are you going to do? Will you just react automatically, or will you take a breath, find that psychological distance, and ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Because honestly, that simple pause, it can change the entire dynamic of your day. Thank you so much for exploring this with me, and we will see you in the next one.